What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the surprising reveal of the number 21 team in my 2019 NFL Power Rankings, the Tennessee Titans. And coming in here at 21 here is a good bit lower than you're going to see out there. ESPN, NFL Network have them 12 and 14. For me, this goes back to a lot of what I said about this team last year, where I didn't hate this team, but I certainly didn't earn any favors from Titans fans when I said it's a good, not great team, a team that was going to win 9 games and fall just short of the playoffs. Well, they won 9 games, couldn't win week 17, and missed the playoffs, but what do I know? The thing with this Titans team, for one, your quarterback just isn't, very good. He doesn't elevate the play of those around him, and we're going to talk in depth about Mariota in just a minute, but I think the bigger thing probably is that this team doesn't have any superstar players. And I'm not talking about players that ESPN's going to run headlines on and talk about all the time. I don't care about that. I'm talking about players that keep coordinators up at night, wondering how you're going to stop them. Players that create mismatch problems. Players that when you're down 2 scores on the road and you need a play and can't seem to get anything to go right, players that can create problems and get you back in games. The Titans just don't really have that. Yeah, they've got Jarrell Casey, Kevin Byard. For one, they are at positions that are just a little harder to get those plays from, easier positions to scheme against, I guess, but I also don't necessarily consider those guys elite tier 1 superstars. So while this might be the deepest roster in the NFL, and we have a ton to talk about on this team, probably more of a roster review than any team we've done to this point because they are that deep, what happens when you don't have a great quarterback and you don't have any superstar players is you lack an identity. You lack that fallback option, that counterpunch, and you become a little bit of a vanilla team. And that is really how I perceive this Titans team. So if you're new to the series, what we do here is we go through the roster, we rank each position group, how they stack up against the rest of the league. While we do that, you will be looking at my own custom Madden roster. So while it is a video game, these are my own ratings and they accurately show how I perceive each player, and it's just a really nice graphic to use for these videos. Then we're going to take a look at the schedule, go game by game, talk about the Vegas over/under and my win total expectations, and now that we're getting here into the higher portion of the power rankings, we do have to talk about playoffs. It's not that these Titans can't make the playoffs, guys. So we'll talk about what this team's going to have to do if they want to get in there. So if you enjoy, if you learn something, please do hit that like button. It's the easiest way to support my channel and share my content. Also subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss any more deep dive power ranking reveals. Lastly, if you're shopping for tickets, use promo code FranchiseGuy on SeatGeek. You'll save $20 on your first purchase where you're going to get the best prices anyway, so go check that out. So I think it's a good time to transition to that roster breakdown where we're going to start with the quarterback. And this is a big issue with this Titans team is Marcus Mariota. This team has so much depth. They're almost like the Patriots in that way that they don't have any superstars, but they do have a ton of depth. The problem is Marcus Mariota is not Tom Brady. Marcus Mariota does not elevate the play of those around him like Tom Brady does. So Mariota and this quarterback room as a whole is going to come in tied for 21st. And I like Marcus Mariota, but there are a ton of criticisms I have on him. For one, he doesn't elevate the receivers around him. They've tried drafting receivers 2nd, 3rd round. Players that I think quarterbacks like Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers could have developed into borderline star players, guys like Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas. The Titans just haven't shown the ability to do that with Marcus Mariota. That's a criticism of him. Also, he just hasn't been able to take that step up and get this team to being a legitimate playoff threat. Those are a little bit more subjective things, though. Let's talk about his film and what bothers me about him as a player. And the thing is, it's the exact same thing we said about him last year. My biggest, foremost concern about Marcus Mariota is that he is a check down machine in a bad way. If you're Tom Brady and you can't move, the check down is a good option. But when you're Marcus Mariota, and you, in theory, should be one of the most dominant mobile quarterbacks in the NFL based on your physical ability, I do not want to see you on 3rd and 5 before the pass rush gets home, take the check down, and watch the receiver get tackled 2 yards short of the first down. I want to see you sense pressure. I want to see you get out of the pocket and extend plays. And a big part of this is he just doesn't have that ideal pocket awareness. The thing you talk about with Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Baker Mayfield, Carson Wentz, do I need to keep going? What makes these guys so great is they can sense when the pressure's about to get home before it gets there. With Mariota, it feels like most of the times when he starts scrambling, it's too late. And even if he has this great physical ability, he just doesn't use it like he should. And at this point in his career, when this has been my criticism of the Titans for the last 2 years, why is that going to change now all of a sudden? The Titans fans told me last year that with a new offensive coordinator, they were going to do a better job of getting Mariota to be more mobile. It didn't happen. It just didn't. And he might show flashes for 3 or 4 games. That's the other thing, is he's wildly inconsistent. And I think that might fall back to his arm talent. He just doesn't have an elite arm. And when you don't have other elite traits, he's not creating consistent throwing windows with big-time throws. So what is he? Is he Alex Smith? I think that's the best comparison for him. You know, Alex Smith was a borderline MVP candidate when they put elite play calling and playmakers around him. That could be what happens here in Tennessee. I strongly doubt that's what we're going to see. He is what he is at this point for me. And that is a little scary for the Titans because what do you do with Marcus Mariota? This team is good enough that they're not going to be picking in the top 10. They're probably not going to be looking at many prospects that offer a higher ceiling than Mariota. It's not that Mariota is bad. He's a top 24 quarterback or so. So there's a dangerous opportunity, I guess, for this team to get stuck in quarterback purgatory, which is a scary thought if I'm a Titans fan. So I would be pretty surprised, honestly, if Mariota wasn't back on a new contract after this season, because I don't think he'll be terrible. He'll probably be about what he was last year. So that's the spiel on Mariota. Obviously, with that take, it is going to be a reason this team comes in 21st, and maybe there's no coincidence that they're 21st in quarterback ranking and 21st in the power rankings. But when your quarterback just isn't creating a lot of offense, when he's inconsistent as a thrower and not elevating the play of those around him, it is going to be hard for you to win 10 games, and even beyond that, win a playoff game. But I do like what this team did acquiring Ryan Tannehill for a late round pick. I think it was, a 5th or 6th round pick. It was pretty much a moot point, whatever they gave up for him. Miami was just ready to move on. Ryan Tannehill, the player, is pretty similar to Mariota, actually. He's got those good physical traits that he doesn't always use. He's a bit of a checkdown king. I think when Mariota gets banged up a game or two, which is another concern with Mariota, is he just gets hurt a lot, you're getting 80-85% of what you had in Mariota and a similar player, so you don't really have to change your play calling. I think I look at Jacksonville and wonder, why would you give Nick Foles all that money if Tannehill was available to another AFC team, in fact, a team in your own division, to get him for free when you basically sold your soul for Nick Foles? I would rather have Ryan Tannehill than Nick Foles. I'm sorry, I would. So that was a good move. You've got probably the best backup in the NFL, which is good because this team is going to try to win, I guess, despite their quarterback. Not that Mariota is an insult to this team, but their quarterback room is not going to make or break this team. It's going to come down to really winning close games and getting everyone to play as a unit. And Ryan Tannehill can execute that almost as well as Mariota, I think. Then you've got Logan Woodside in here. I'm a big Logan Woodside fan. He's kind of like a Case Keenum, just kind of lacks that arm strength threshold, but he's a fun player to watch. Maybe at some point in his career he gets an opportunity and starts some games. We'll see. Odds are that's probably not for this Titans team. So 21st as a whole for the quarterback. And then we've got the running back room. Derrick Henry and Dion Lewis. Now, I tend to be maybe a little bit low on Derrick Henry. I think that's just because I don't try to project him as something he's not. A lot of people have been predicting a Derrick Henry, Adrian Peterson-esque breakout, I think, for multiple years now. That's not what he is. He's a slow starter, but he is a massive human being. and is faster than anyone at that size should ever be. He's a dominant goal line threat, though I will say he kind of needs a little bit of a hole because he doesn't have the same, Zeke Elliott or even explosion that a lot of tier 2 and tier 3 running backs have to go from point A to point B at the snap of a finger. He doesn't really have that. He's a bit of a slow starter. He's good on like outside zones because he does have a little extra time to get going. He's a very unique player. And he also has a bit of that Jordan Howard thing going. And this is my biggest criticism of Derrick Henry, is that he's not really a dominant receiving threat because of that kind of slow starting movement of his. So when he's on the field, teams are pretty convinced that you're going to run the ball, and more often than not, you do. So when running the ball is already a deficiency, when you should be passing the ball more, to tell your opponent that you're probably running the ball is less than ideal. So it's not that I don't like Derrick Henry. I think if you look at him for what he is, which is a timeshare type running back who in certain situations can be a dominant force, whether it be short yardage, outside zones, as a complement to a speedier, shiftier back, I think you're going to walk away pretty impressed by Derrick Henry. But if you expect him to come in and be some elite 3-down back and elevate himself to being one of the 5 or 6 best running backs in the NFL, I just don't think that's going to happen. And then you have Dion Lewis, who I'm a huge fan of. I don't know if there's a running back in the NFL outside of maybe LaShawn McCoy who consistently makes the first guy miss more than Dion Lewis. Now, he lacks kind of the power, straight line speed to create big time plays after he makes that guy miss, but he's a really nice weapon here. He's going to split carries with Derrick Henry. It sounds weird to say, but Dion Lewis, I think, is actually a better inside zone power running back than Derrick Henry because he can get from point A to point B a lot quicker, and he's much better at making that first guy miss, even if it is in short areas. So it's a nice 1-2 punch. It's going to be fun to see how Arthur Smith, who is very familiar with both of these guys, being promoted internally here as the offensive coordinator, chooses to use these guys. Then you have David Fluellen, very similar to Derrick Henry, big bruising guy. Jeremy McNichols, who's bounced around the league. We'll see if he can make this team as like a post-hype sleeper type kind of guy. I am not a fan of his game, just not a very skilled running back at all, though he has physical traits. And then they did pick up Alex Barnes, a good pickup there. Lacks the explosion and short area quickness, but a really smart player, a good pass blocker, really smooth hands out of the backfield, decently patient runner. I think he'll make this team, especially over Jeremy McNichols. And if anything happened to Dion Lewis, I would be heavily intrigued by what Alex Barnes has to offer as this team's receiving back. And Dion Lewis hasn't exactly been a model of health over his career, so definitely keep an eye on Alex Barnes. So the running back room as a whole is going to come in tied for 13th. I didn't have the nicest words to say about Derrick Henry, but I do think he's a nice weapon for this team, and I am a big fan of Dion Lewis. Then at wide receiver, certainly an upgrade from what this team had last year. So Corey Davis showed some really nice flashes last year, and to be completely honest, his career has not developed as quickly as you would like, and I pin a lot of that on Marcus Mariota. I think Corey Davis just might be a true number 1 wide receiver already. We just haven't realized it yet. Was a huge fan of him coming out. So I like Corey Davis. I'd love to see him take another step up this year. He's that true outside wide receiver. And then they signed Adam Humphries, prototypical slot wide receiver. I think his route running is better than your usual slot wide receiver. He can actually get open beyond just within 10 yards. He's a very good, running posts, hitches, deep outs, corner routes. He is very effective as a route runner. His catch and run ability, I don't think is as good as your typical slot wide receiver, but he might be a little better as a actual receiver that creates separation, and his hands are very good. That was a good signing, and certainly an upgrade to what they were rolling out last year, though Taywan Taylor, a third-round pick in 2017, did show some promise, so it's not a massive upgrade in my opinion. And then you draft A.J. Brown in the second round. And A.J. Brown in college was a very good wide receiver. A lot of people liked him as the best wide receiver in this class and a first-round talent. I had him around this range, late first, early second, and I thought it was a good pick. The only thing is, you've got Adam Humphries here, you've got Taywan Taylor here, and you have Delanie Walker coming back. So A.J. Brown, who is very used to playing in the slot, using that elite physical ability as a catch and run guy in short hitting routes, is going to have a bit of a learning curve, as I think he's going to have to be a full-time outside wide receiver here. Maybe they continue to use him in the slot. Only time will tell there. I think it was a good pick and a good value and a huge need for this team, but when I look at the rest of this depth at wide receiver, it is interesting to see what his skill set is and where he's going to end up lining up. So you really do have a much improved wide receiver room from what it was last year, but again, none of these guys are game-breaking matchup nightmares unless Corey Davis can really become that consistent number one. Behind those four, you've got Tajay Sharp hanging around here. Good contested catch target. A nice player to have deep on your depth chart if injuries happen. You need a critical third down. He's a good target. Smart player, just lacks the physical ability. Cameron Batson actually showed some signs last year. He's going to have to compete, though, with all of the guys you have in here. Khalif Raymond, Darius Jennings, Anthony Ratliff-Williams, a freak athlete, undrafted free agent. I expect Cameron Batson makes this team as the 6th. And then you've got the tight ends, Delanie Walker coming off a serious injury. He's not getting any younger. I expect he takes a dip down, but is still a very effective tight end. You know, he's an undersized guy and a tremendous blocker, but if he loses a half a step, he might not be the same mismatch problem he has. So we'll see what Delanie Walker can be. I'm definitely projecting a bit of a drop-off coming off the injury at his age, but he'll still be a pretty nice player. Then you've got Jonnu Smith, a third-round pick in 2017. Showed some flashes, needs to be more consistent, especially as a blocker. Good catch and run guy. And then you also have Mycole Pruitt, who did a really good job filling in for Delanie Walker. He is that same kind of undersized tight end, oversized wide receiver type of thing. So he was a nice replacement in this scheme for Delanie Walker. He might, resume more of a depth third tight end role, maybe even a fourth tight end, as Anthony Firstger here is more of a traditional tight end. He showed some signs last year. You got a really deep tight end room, I'll give them that. But like we said about this team, they're deep at like every position. You also got Cole Wick, Ryan Hewitt, going to compete for roster spots there. Firstger, no guarantee. Firkser, no guarantee to make this team. So the receiver situation as a whole, it is going to come in tied for 21st. Again, much improved from last year where it would have been ranked in the bottom 5. You've got some new bodies in here. It's going to be better. But again, no true difference-making talent here, in my opinion. Good players, but not elite or great players. And then you've got the offensive line, who actually did play pretty poor last year. After multiple years of being one of the better lines in the NFL, I expect the offensive line to be better this year. I do have them tied for 12th. You love the tackle combination. Taylor Lewan, Jack Conklin, one of the best tackle duos in the NFL. The center, Ben Jones, is a bit of a question as he's getting older. He had a big drop-off in play last year. Right guard, also a major question mark with Kevin Pamphile, Nate Davis, a third-round pick. I do think at center and right guard, there are going to be some pretty big questions about this line. At left guard, you've got Roger Saffold, a big signing. He's getting up there in age. I'd be pretty surprised if he played up to the contract they gave him. Certainly an upgrade from what they had last year, but I do think that might go down as a little bit of an overrated signing. You let Josh Klein go here. I don't see a massive difference between Josh Klein and Roger Saffold. I get that Klein had a bad year last year, but I'm not sure that was the move to make right there. And then you do have some depth. Dennis Kelly at tackle can play at a replacement level, I think, if anything happened to one of these tackles. Corey Levin at center, a sixth-round pick in 2017, backing up at center, interior. No one really has offensive line depth, though. No one truly worth diving into beyond the starters here. So the offensive line as a whole is going to come in tied for 12th. That is still probably the best unit on this offense. Those tackle combinations probably being the best asset that this entire team has as a whole. So the team's offense going to come in 24th. You got a ton of depth here, a lot of different pieces to move around. But again, we keep saying it, but no true difference makers on this offense. and it's just going to be hard for them to have true consistency as a top 20 offense with this quarterback and these skill players. And then offensive coaching culture, you got a new offensive coordinator here. I get that you're familiar with Arthur Smith, but you don't really have a quarterback here that's going to come in and run the ship. You got a lot of stuff to still kind of figure out here on the offense. So a coaching culture of tied for 29th on the offensive side of the ball. So let's move on and talk about the defense that I do think is a little better than the offense. Starting with the run defense, the interior defensive line here, really good group. Obviously, Jarrell Casey front-lining this entire defense. Borderline superstar there, Jarrell Casey. Maybe even an underrated player in this league. Now, he's not to the level of like Aaron Donald, Geno Atkins. He comes in that second tier with like Mike Daniels, Chris Jones, Kenny Clark, Akeem Hicks, Cameron Hayward, Stephon Tuitt. I think you get the point. There's a big cluster of guys in that second tier that are going to be really good 50, 60 pressure a year types of pass rushers. But we're talking about the run defense here anyway. I care so little about run defense that I'm already inclined to start talking about pass rush. It's not that run defense doesn't matter. It's just that there's a high week-to-week variance. It's very easy to find these interior guys. Everyone can kind of stop the run in the NFL unless you're one of the worst two in the NFL. That's when you can really notice it. But anyway, it's going to be a good run defense. It starts with Jarrell Casey up front. They're going to come in tied for 17th. You've got Austin Johnson, very good player. Daquan Jones, explosive interior guy. Brent Urban was dominant against the run for Baltimore last year. A prime example of what we just said. You don't need to spend a first-round pick on a guy like Christian Wilkins. You can just sign Brent Urban for almost nothing and get the same thing. It's the biggest reason why run defense doesn't have a big priority in my power rankings, because most teams are able to find guys like Brent Urban, who's going to be a rotational first and second down run defender and be very good at that. They also drafted Jeffrey Simmons in the first round. Definitely got to talk about him. I don't expect that he plays this year. If this team is red hot and has 8 games in December and they need a spark on this defense, maybe they try to rush Jeffrey Simmons back. I think more likely scenario is that they take a red shirt season here, say it's not worth rushing him back, we'll bring him in effectively as a rookie in 2020. Now, he is a guy that does have potential, I think even higher than Jarrell Casey. He as an athlete can be that Fletcher Cox type of dominant impact in the future for this team, and I thought that was an excellent pick for this team, because what do we keep saying about this team? They don't have that superstar player. Jeffrey Simmons was a top 10 talent who got injured and fell in the draft with an ACL injury. I like that they are taking a swing at a potential superstar to add to this very good defense that just needs a guy like that. So again, the run defense, 17th, they're going to play the run very well. They've got good linebackers and secondary guys that can contribute there as well that we'll talk about. And then the pass rush. All starts for me with Harold Landry. Fantastic pick in the second round last year. He's like a baby Von Miller. Insanely explosive, elite bend. Doesn't have much of a power element to his game, but I'm really excited to see what he offers in his second season. And, you know, he's the kind of guy that if this team is going to make that playoff push, he elevates to being a superstar type of player. I think he has that upside. I had him as a top 10 player in last year's draft, and he was one of the most productive rookie rushers to nobody's surprise. Frankly, a lot of people were surprised that he fell to the second round. So he's a bit of a wild card here if he can elevate even more. But that would be a pretty big jump. He's far from a perfect player at this point in his career. And then this team signed Cameron Wake. Good signing. He'll be an impact as a third down rusher. Not what he used to be, but certainly an upgrade from what they had last year on the edge. They did have Brian Orakpo there and Derek Morgan, so veterans of similar caliber. I think Wake is a slight boost to what you had there. You're getting some pass rush on the interior from Jarrell Casey, like we already kind of mentioned. Daquan Jones, actually a pretty good power rusher as well. You also got to throw Jayon Brown's name into the ring. Usually you wouldn't mention an inside linebacker as a pass rusher, or at least a player that's going to consistently contribute as a pass rusher, but he stands out to you. He has a very low center of gravity, can actually rush with a lot of speed and power, even if that's not his primary position. He is insanely explosive as a great first step. So whether he's as a blitzer or they've actually lined him up coming off the edge as an edge rusher at times, he is a guy that you have to throw in the ring as a pass rusher here and an impact in that. Was a very pleasant surprise. So they're going to come at you from every angle. Again, no elite pass rusher here. No one in that Khalil Mack, Von Miller, Aaron Donald, Fletcher Cox, Geno Atkins tier. Better offensive lines will be able to handle this pass rush because you don't have that tier 1 rusher. But that's fine. It's still the 14th pass rush. I'm not trying to knock this pass rush. I'm just pointing out that it's just another unit that isn't game-breaking here. Which, when Mariota's your quarterback, you need some unit here to give you an identity and be a nightmare for coordinators. I don't know if this pass rush is a nightmare. It's very good. And then the linebackers here, again, a ton of depth, no true superstars. Wesley Woodyard, that veteran presence here, very good, very balanced linebacker, could do a hell of a lot worse than Wesley Woodyard. And then they were trying to find this number 2 here when they drafted Rashaan Evans in the first round last year. They actually already had that in Jayon Brown, who was a breakout surprise last year, a 5th round pick in 2017. He's going to make it very hard for Rashaan Evans to get on the field. Now, they're going to want to push Evans onto the field because they spent a 1st round pick on him. But at this point, Jayon Brown is the better athlete, has the better cover instincts, and is a better tackler than Rashaan Evans. So we'll see who ends up getting more playing time there. I'm sure they're going to do something to get both of these guys on the field. You don't really want to take Wesley Woodyard off the field, but they just might. So you got 3 guys there that would be a lot of teams' best linebackers, but none of these guys are superstars. You also have a ton of depth to talk about. Darren Bates, Nigel Harris, they draft David Long in the 6th round. Similar guy to like Jayon Brown coming in, just an elite straight line runner. He's going to have to develop. Riley Burrow. So you got a bunch of guys that are going to compete here. We actually need to rewind here for a second and talk about the depth on the edge because you got a bunch there, just like the rest of this roster. Kameli Correa, a good run defender, kind of a converted off-ball edge hybrid. They draft DeAndre Walker in the 5th round. He could very well be a starter here because Cameron Wake's not going to be starting on 1st and 2nd down a whole lot. DeAndre Walker, he fits this role that there are a lot of players in this league that have success as a 1st and 2nd down 3-4 outside linebacker who might come off the field or not be an impact as a true pass rusher. The New York Jets actually have a ton of these guys that make me think of DeAndre Walker. Guys like Jordan Jenkins, Brandon Copeland, he could be a good impact as a run defender on 1st and 2nd down. He might be able to get, if he were a full-time starter, 4 or 5 sacks in a year. I don't think that they see him as a guy that they want as a pass rusher, but they need to get snaps and good snaps from that outside linebacker position to buy reps for Cameron Wake, who they don't want to get tired defending the run. So I thought that was a good pick, a good job recognizing what this team needed, even though I don't think he'll ever be some kind of star player, but he can be a very good role player for this team. So that's the front 7. It's a good, not great unit. Against bad offensive lines, this defense is going to look really dominant because of what this team can do coming from every direction and the depth they have at linebacker. But if you're going against a better quarterback or a better offensive line, there's no one that you're really circling here in this front 7 to be like, he's a problem. We need to do everything we can to take that guy out of the game. They don't have that guy right now. They do have a lot of good players coming at you from a lot of different directions, though, which is more than a lot of teams can say. So then we got to move on and talk about the secondary, which is a very good deep group. Adoree Jackson had a bit of a breakout last year as this team's best cover corner. He's a very good young corner. He could take his step up this year towards being a top 10 corner in this league. He's definitely an underrated, unknown player in the league right now. At a good trajectory, he was used as more of a specialist at USC, so we kind of expected a bit of a learning curve for him, but I think that he's actually adapting to being a cover corner quicker than some expected. So definitely a bright spot in this secondary. You got Malcolm Butler, Logan Ryan, very good, smart players. Not very good in coverage, to be honest, especially in man-to-man. They're good zone corners for sure. and very good impacts in the run defense, but I do think better offenses are going to look at those two guys and think of them as guys you can attack with better wide receivers. The depth has a bit of a drop-off after that. You do have LaShawn Sims. He's played in spurts throughout his career. Kenneth Durden, Joshua Kalu, Ty Smith, another Michael Jordan in the NFL here. All these guys are going to compete for the 5th, 6th, maybe even 7th corner spots. Then at safety, it's an extremely good room of safeties. Kevin Byard, probably top 7 safety. Very versatile guy. He's got that rare range as a free safety, but he can also come down in the box and play the run, cover, short to intermediate routes as well, whether it be in man or zone coverage. Definitely the most impactful player on this defense, in my opinion. Jarrell Casey, you could argue, is a better player, but I think that rare safety like Kevin Byard is a bigger impact when you look at the scope of the rest of the league, because it's just a lot harder to find a guy like Kevin Byard. Then you got Kenny Vaccaro, really good, strong safety type, a good complement to Kevin Byard. He can focus more on shutting down the quick-hitting passes, which when he's in that role, he can be a very good player. If you ask him to be a rangy center fielder and show elite ball skills and playmaker instincts as a cover guy, you might walk away a little disappointed, but you put him in the box as that, modern bandit linebacker nickel safety type, he's very good in that spot. And then they draft Amani Hooker in the 4th round. He was actually a nickel corner. Crazy comparisons to Desmond King coming out of Iowa. Elite ball skills, physical nickel defender, but lacks the ideal physical traits. So if they can turn him into this team's Desmond King, that'd be great. He would make a list of players, of rookies that are coming in to learn under guys who have odd levels of pro comparisons. Logan Ryan being a very good comparison for Amani Hooker, because Ryan is not a very athletic guy, but he's extremely smart and physical. So he's going to do a good job learning from Logan Ryan, and could be the long-term replacement as this team's nickel corner as well, though I think he'll be considered more safety depth at the moment. Then you've also got Dane Cruikshank, super athletic dude, made some plays last year. He's going to be good depth here, so you're really 4 deep at safety. You got some other names in there competing to maybe make this team, but I think they'll just go with 4 safeties. So the secondary as a whole is very good. They're going to come in tied for 11th. I like what you got in Kevin Byard, Adoree Jackson. You do have some points, though, in that secondary that might be able to be attacked by better offenses. So the defense as a whole is going to come in 13th here. So one of the better defenses in the NFL. The defensive coaching and culture, 15th. That's probably worst case for this defensive coaching and culture. There's a good chance, I think, in the second year here with Mike Vrabel that this defense does really come into its own. I will say that if that happens, it's going to be because Harold Landry and Adoree Jackson take steps towards being dominant top 10 caliber players at their position. Because other than those two, I don't really see a whole lot of players on this team becoming those elite impacts that this team might be looking for. So let's take a look at the schedule now that we've gone through that roster. It's a pretty average looking schedule, I would say. You got to start at Cleveland. That won't be easy. You got the Colts coming to town. This team never really has success against this team, but we'll give them that win in the home opener. There's going to be a lot of excitement around this team, so I think they can pull that one out. Then you got to go to Jacksonville. You got to go to Atlanta. So I've got them starting 1 and 3. They got Buffalo coming to town, get their revenge after losing to them in Buffalo last year. You got to go to Denver. Question mark game. They could very well win that. We've ranked them above Denver here. Then you got the Chargers, probably a little overmatched there. You got the Bucks coming to town, gave them that. At Carolina will not be easy. I think they lose that. I did give them the win here at home against Kansas City. We don't know if Tyreek Hill is going to be in there. That would be a problem for this team. But that's a game that I see these fans really getting up for and could be a bit of an upset there at home. Jacksonville coming to town, gave them that against Nick Foles. At the Colts, when was the last time this team won in Indianapolis? At Oakland, gave them that win. Houston, gave them a win there, so splitting against the division here with a loss against Houston at the end of the year, and then losing to New Orleans at home. So I've got them going 7 and 9 this year, which is going to come in under their 8.5 over-under. I will say that over-under does seem a bit high for me. So I've got a win range of 6 to 9. Maybe they can get to 10 if they get those, breakouts from guys like Harold Landry and Adoree Jackson that could elevate this team to being like a top 5 defense. I think if this team is going to make the playoffs, that is going to be their path to success. I don't see, despite the additions on offense, this becoming any kind of, offense that's going to carry this team. I think if this team is going to be a playoff team, they're going to have to find that true identity with an elite defense. Currently, I can't look at this team and say they have enough elite game changers on the defensive side of the ball to become a top 5 defense. It's a very good defense. Don't get me wrong there, Titans fans. I'm not ripping on this defense. It's a very good unit. But if you want to become the 2015 Broncos, you want to become the early Russell Wilson Seahawks, or last year's Bears, you need to have game-breaking players. Khalil Mack, Von Miller. With the Jags, you had Jalen Ramsey, Calais Campbell, a Defensive Player of the Year. You want to be that good and be legit playoff teams that can win multiple playoff games, you got to have those game-breaking defensive players. It's a super deep, talented defense. I just don't see it right now. I like Adoree Jackson. I like Harold Landry a lot, but you're projecting them to take massive, multiple tier jump leaps to becoming the type of players that this defense is going to need to become that level good. So I hope you understand that I don't hate this Titans team, but the lack of difference-making players really concerns me. You have a defensive-minded coach, so you're not going to be able to create problems from your play calling either, like we've seen with teams like the Rams or the Bears or the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Colts. Their play callers elevate that offense. I don't see that happening here. Granted, we've never seen Arthur Smith as an offensive play caller, but it's hard to predict that. So that's the breakdown of the team. Titans fans watching this, please do let me know. I know it's going to be pretty negative feedback. I understand that. I'm just conveying my opinions here. If you're an NFL fan of another team, also comment. Would love to talk with you guys. Please hit that like button. Cheers as always, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.